So if you think about your life for a second and you think about all the skills that you possess, maybe you're good at fixing stuff, maybe you're a good pilot, maybe you do scuba diving, or maybe something as simple as riding a bike. I guarantee you there's at least one thing that you always revered, but there was always something preventing you from giving it a go. Now in my case, that will be skiing. And when I finally started to do some research on it, mostly because I'm a nerd and I have to do research on everything, I realized that I should probably hurry up with this because skiing itself may not be around forever, and in this video I'm gonna share with you why is that the case. So before we tackle the future of this sport, we have to look at its past and its roots. If you remember your history and geography, you know that our planet went through a series of ice ages throughout its existence. Now, for most of these, humans were not around, so we didn't have to deal with everything that comes with it. That, however, changed during the last ice age. Humans were around and they had to do everything in order to survive. One of the first challenges was moving around. In case you were not aware, ice have a nasty tendency of being slippery, and deep snow is, well, deep, and walking on it quickly turns into being stuck in it. So our ancestors used one tool that was their birthright, and that was our brain. They realized that putting a piece of wood or its bark under their feet and strapping it somehow provided them with almost magical ability of suddenly walking on top of that soft snow. They also noticed that when you're moving downhill, you can also slide, which is a lot faster. How do we know this, you may ask? Well, they also like to do a lot of cave art, and they left a lot of evidence in form of drawings of something that resembles skis. And there were also skis found frozen in a permafrost in modern day Russia, Central Asia, and Northern Europe. Now, I think it comes without saying that this activity for a long period of time, at least from our perspective, remained pretty rudimentary. And no, we definitely didn't have any caveman winter Olympics with some frozen lake figure skating, or maybe even downhill skiing while dodging mammoth gates. Although when I think about it, that would actually be pretty cool. Now, the further development of skiing came from Sami people who are indigenous to the Northern Europe. They use skis and sleds for everyday activities such as hunting or moving goods and people around. Now, alpine skiing as we know it today started appearing around 18th century. Right at that time, there was an interesting competition held by the Norwegian army that included people skiing downhill while evading trees in the forest and shooting on top of that. Now, if this happens to sound familiar to you, that's because that discipline today is known as a biathlon. Now, by the 1800s, skiing became an everyday occurrence in Northern Europe and Scandinavia, and it quickly developed into a sport of which Norwegians in particular became masters of. Right at that time, the skis itself went through some serious modification and enhancement that enabled people from carving the slopes for the first time instead of just sliding sideways. The man who invented this and popularized that was Sondre Norheim, a Norwegian ski legend at the time. Now, at the beginning of 20th century, skiing spread like a wildfire, and soon we had Canada, United States, Chile, Argentina, New Zealand, all joining Europeans in this new wintry craze. And it all culminated in 1924 when the first Winter Olympics were held in Chamonix, France. Now, as we know, the following few decades were pretty harsh on people around the world, and skiing was not spared either. At that period, it was used pretty much by the all parties involved in the World War I and World War II, famously deployed by the Finnish in their war against the Soviet Union. Now, in the years following the Second World War, we see a kind of a renaissance for skiing. And by the 80s and 90s, skiing became one of the favorite pastimes for people around the world. Skiing became much more accessible, and winter holidays started rivaling their summer counterparts. Ski resorts started popping up all over the planet, and it was especially important for already forgotten towns here in the United States. It kind of gave them a second life. Everybody and their mother were shredding the slopes, and even people who did not partake in this potentially bone-crushing activity still found a lot of joy in visiting and spending some time in these cozy little places, mostly because it became a kind of a status symbol and it provided a lot of peace and tranquility. Now, all of that brings us to today. And before we discuss about what future brings, allow me a few moments to tell you a few words about something that I found very interesting, and it might be even helpful to you. See, recently I started regularly uploading videos on YouTube and a couple more platforms, which is something that I always wanted wanted to do. But as you can imagine, it is a very long way until I get to the point that I can completely support myself from doing this. Now, what I decided to do for you is to try to look for some really interesting and cool products that I would personally consider buying for myself. You can find a link for those in the pinned comment and the description of this video and in every future video that I'm gonna be uploading. Now, if you follow those links and you make a purchase, that would definitely help this channel. If you don't like that product, you don't think that's something that you need, please don't spend your money on that, because spending money on stuff that you need is pointless and defeats the purpose. So with that out of the way, let's go back to the video. So what the future of skiing looks like and what are the challenges that it needs to tackle? Well, firstly, there's a climate change issue. See, for the last 50 years and the last couple decades especially, we went through some really unusual weather patterns. We have wildfires that are increasingly more difficult to put out and contain. We have extreme and prolongated droughts, and we also have some pretty intense flash flooding in the places where we never had them before. When it comes to northern latitudes and higher elevations, we have unusually warm winters with less and less precipitation, thus less and less snow. Now, as you know, snow is the key ingredient if you want to have a successful winter season. If you're operating and running a business, or for example, a ski resort, then you know how expensive it is. And there's also a fact that you're limited by those few months, usually from December to February, although that varies depending on the location. So if you don't see a lot of snow during the winter, that's definitely gonna reflect on your yearly budget and in your financial report. Add a couple consecutive years to that, or maybe even a decade, and you're all but guaranteed to go bankrupt. Now, a lot of traditional ski resorts are trying to combat this by adding a lot of extra activities that can be done in the summer and also extend their season. One of those is mountain biking. They can utilize the same slopes that are used in the wintertime. Another one will be simple hiking, especially because this one, apart from a little bit of fitness, doesn't really require any specific ability, and it can also be done on those very same slopes. Now, all of these are perfect for a supplement revenue streams, but they can still not replace the main one. Another issue is the fact that any activity that includes you putting on your skis or your snowboards carries a certain degree of risk of injury. This fact is the reason why most skiers are between the age of 18 and 45. Now, the generations that popularized this sport is the boomer generation, and for a long time they comprise the majority of the people that call themselves skiers. Now, the issue today with this is the fact that they're progressive in age, and they will have to pass that mantle to a next generation, which will be the millennials. Now, this is where we encounter another problem. You see, skiing is not that popular with millennials like it was with their parents, and even more importantly, their purchasing power is significantly lower than it was before. And this is very important because, as we established earlier, skiing is not cheap by any measure, and even if you want to get a basic equipment, you're looking at $1,000 easily. Now, if you want to make a lifestyle out of this, well, in that case, you will definitely have to have a family meeting over there. Now, to be fair, according to the experts, skiing is not going anywhere anytime soon. There will be still plenty of people who will be enjoying the winter day on their slopes. There's just the fact that we gotta be aware that more and more slopes will look like this instead of this. And that brings us to the end of this video today. I hope you had a lot of fun like I did when I did a research and shooting for this video. Let me know what you think about this. Are you a skier? Are you planning to become one? And what do you think what the future will bring for this sport? Also, if you like my content, you can hit like and subscribe. If you feel generous and you're able to support me, I also have a Patreon account, and the link is going to be provided in the description below. And if you want, you can also watch some of my other content that I make that should appear somewhere around my head right about now. Once again, thank you very much for tuning in. Stay safe, and I'll see you next one.